course, you all know by now, Ndengo Njiru is actually a black bull. Easily translated. Jude Jomo, Mheshimiwa. Where's Mheshimiwa Jude? He's right here. We also recognize Damari, call her my daughter, Kiamba constituency. We have some MCAs from Kitui. That is Mercy there. But Mzee wa Bagusi, businessmen and professionals. Mzee Nyambane is actually Zakayo. Zakia. FJNC, Kamau.
This lady here is Kameme.
Oh, Kameme.
And also, she was secondly for the women rep.
Thank you.
She was married.
Oh, well done.
Former MCOs.
Yeah, just mention MCA Kiambu. Karisho. Ah, good. But of course, today we call each other Mwanaiya. In Kikamba means brother. A former MP for Limuru, Mheshimiwa Peter Mwadhi. Part of the reason we are here, literally. So, the subject matter is entitled State-Sponsored Terrorism and the Lack of Political Goodwill to Implement the NADCO Report. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here at this center. On Thursday, November 28th, instead of mourning the unexpected loss of their 23-year-old son, Erastus Duarte, a family and community were forced to flee and seek refuge owing to thugs. Several mourners, including Duarte's relatives, suffered injuries that required medical attention. Others were fortunate to escape the melee physically unscathed. As the dust settled, it was evident that these goons had one purpose in mind: to disrupt, to destroy, and prevent persons whom they felt were hostile to the Kenya Kwanza administration from interacting with mourners in Bibirone village, Limuru constituency, Kiambu County. To compound an already dire situation, area MCA Christopher Ireri and former Limuru MP Peter Mwadhi were abducted and unceremoniously bundled into Subarus by unidentified men before being abandoned near the southern bypass at around 11 p.m. That is for Peter Mwadhi. For Christopher, we gather is still in hospital in Kiambu, many kilometers away from Bibirone village. By the way, these were by hooded men. Fully armed with walkie-talkies. I think you hear the testimony of Mheshimiwa Mwadhi. Despite the statements from both the Inspector General of the National Police Service, Mr. Douglas Kanja, and the Director of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, Mr. Mohammed Amin, that the chaos was due to, quote unquote, a lack of advanced intelligence, and that Honorable Mwadhi and Honorable Ireri were not in their custody. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence is irrefutable. This was a state-sponsored attack and abductions. Honorable Mwadhi is here with us today, and Honorable Ireri is in hospital in Kiambu. They will tell the country their harrowing night of terror with a state-sponsored abduction squad. The Subaru boys. We condemn in the strongest terms possible this state-sponsored terrorism against its own citizens. We are reminded of the words of German pastor Martin Niemöller, very famous. He famously said, and I quote, "First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. End of quote. So Kenyans, that's exactly where we are. If we don't speak out, we will suffer the consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, a terrorist attack on one Kenyan is an attack on all of us, regardless of race, ethnic community, and political persuasion. An abduction of one of us is an affront to all who believe in a free and democratic society. We therefore call upon all Kenyans, irrespective of political persuasion, to call out this rogue regime and in one accord say no, no more state-sponsored terrorism. Fellow Kenyans, we can now attest to the power of our combined protest voices against poor governance and corruption. Kenyans from all walks of life protested peacefully in the courts, on social media, and in print and broadcast media against the Adani Group's opaque, non-competitive, and secretive deals to take over Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, JKIA, and the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, KETRACO. It was the U.S. Department of Justice's indictment of Adani for violations of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, a U.S. anti-bribery law that finally forced Mr. Ruto to concede and purport to cancel the Adani Group deals in the transport and the health sectors on Thursday, November 21, during the State of the Nation address. Whether or not Mr. Ruto's embarrassing concession was due to foreign intervention, it is clear that he did not listen to his fellow Kenyans as he later claimed. What is evident and should be clear to Mr. Ruto and his government is that the voices of the people are and will continue to be the most important, as stated plainly under Article 1 of Kenya's Constitution 2010. While we, the People's Law Opposition, acknowledge, encourage, and respect people's voices, the victory is by no means complete. The opaqueness in the purported cancellation of the JKI and KETRACO deals needs to be examined. In addition, the Adani connection of Social Health Authority, SHA, and Social Health Insurance Fund, SHIF, the Adani needs to be severed immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, co-chair of the dialogue process, I can attest that we negotiated in good faith. This regime has demonstrated time and again that they are not interested in justice or in the interests of Kenyans. Since the tabling of the report in Parliament almost a year ago, on December 7th, 2023, the NADCO agreement has not been implemented. The few concessions on the cost of living have not even been honored. The matters relating to electoral justice have not been implemented, including evaluation of the 2022 election outcomes. The constitutional and legal reforms to ensure credible elections are still pending. Aggression against Jubilee, because we also had that as a very important agenda item, and that's not contained in my statement here. But that was a very important agenda, integrity and commitment to multi-party democracy. And by that we meant that this state-sponsored aggression on Jubilee Party had also to stop. We now know there's even, again, state-sponsored appeal to the higher courts. The Kenya Kwanza regime is clawing back and putting the country on a dangerous trajectory. They are determined to violate the NADCO agreement and the proposed constitutional and legal instruments agreed. Of particular concern are the constitutional timelines for boundary delimitation and the reconstitution of the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, IEBC. The regime is already breaching the Constitution by failing to meet constitutional deadlines for boundary delimitation. We are already facing, ladies and gentlemen, a constitutional crisis. And I saw the cry by the management of the IEBC saying they're seeking an advisory for the Supreme Court. Well, they should just tell Mr. Ruto to implement NADCO report. On IEBC, the regime is not interested in the reconstitution of a credible commission. Through sponsored court cases, the process of setting up the panel has been frustrated. We have a simple question for the judiciary, which, as we say, the last line of defense for democracy. Did the Constitution envisage a situation where the commissioners of the IEBC are not in office? Did the framers of our Constitution contemplate a situation where the courts can allow for a dysfunctional commission? The unpopular regime does not want Kenyans to exercise their sovereign authority by electing leaders through by-elections and referendums, recalling unpopular elected officials or members, and properly preparing for the 2027 elections. Kenya Kwanza is preparing to undermine the people's sovereign authority and manipulate the next election. We will, of course, not allow them. The bill in Senate to stop, for example, the live streaming of results is one way of stealing elections, the coming elections. We will not allow them. In 2024, as the country's position deteriorated, Kenya's violent youth, headed by Generation Z, returned to the streets to seek justice for Kenyans. They were confronted with severe force as of 2023. In reality, there are being orders of abduction and extrajudicial killings following the Gen Z revolution. We want to tell the Gen Z and the Gen Wote that we will continue to stand with them against this state-sponsored violence and impunity. We are still unearthing evidence of infractions, including those that contravene international law. The regime cannot understand the just demands of Kenyans cannot be wished away. As the lives of Kenyans become intolerable and precarious, we continue to demand justice. The next Mandamanos will resolve Kenya's problems once and for all. Finally, we want to warn the Kenya Kwanza regime in the clearest possible terms. We will not allow A, the balkanization of our nation. B, we will never again allow the rigging of elections. And C, we will continue to resist against oppression, come what may. Thank you very much, and may God bless our country, Kenya. Asanteni. Kama kuna swali, but probably before you ask, maybe give opportunity to Mheshimiwa Peter Mwavi. We are actually bought with taxpayers' money. We have said time and again that these are goons sponsored by the state, using walkie-talkies. No amount of denial by the Inspector General and the DCI will convince Kenyans that this is not the case. And I want to challenge Mr. Kanja. I have respect for him, that he should stand and actually, if he's in charge, because he's a member of National Police Service Directorate, to say no and dismantle this criminal crowd, because international community is watching. We must tell them, Kenya is not an island, and everybody is focusing their mind on see the deterioration in the rule of law practice in this country. So, Mheshimiwa Mwadhi, pole sana. He said that twice, 3 times, anapelekwa kwa bush, alafu anaulizana, na hapa iko sawa. Yani hapo wamemalizie hapo. Maximum fear and terrorism.
Thank you, Your Excellency and colleagues who are here, and members of the Fourth Estate. I hope I'll be able to give the story without being emotional. But I want to break it into 2 parts. And part 1 is at the burial the day before and at the burial of Erastus. The day before the burial, Rick G, the former deputy president, called me and he asked me to represent him in that funeral committee with 50,000 shillings. And he also said that he would attend that burial. So when I went there, I found so many people, roughly about 300 of them. And when I spoke to them, because they gathered, I spoke about what Rinji had told me, pole, kwa familia, and then I also brought my pole. And then I told them, for what Rick G is doing in our community or our area, I would be pleased if Rick G himself, Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, who is here, somebody like Matiang'i, brother Eugene, and the rest of them, would join hands and liberate this country from what we are going through. The people who are there were very excited, extremely excited, even to hear that Rick G was going to come. But more importantly, when they heard that there is intention to bring all of us together so that we can liberate our country. That was the day before. And so I told Rick G watu wamepokea vizuri na wamesema unaweza kuja. And therefore the next day he called me and asked me, can you wait for me in an appointed place so that we can go together? And we did so. And he came and we went. I'm trying to make it short. And on reaching there, we found very excited crowd. Because I can tell you, on our arrival, an announcement that we have arrived, the crowd went wild. They were cheering, they welcomed us. The MC also did the same. We got a place where to sit. But when we sat, I observed one thing that was unique. But the area MP, one John Kirago had declined to sit where the VIP tent was, and he decided to go and sit where the Akorino bishops were. And I asked, why would it happen? I just asked somebody. And they said he was offered and he declined. And so we sat in and listened to the people who were speaking, and then we listened to the sermon. Everything was looking okay. But at one point, when the bishop, the main bishop, was preaching, there was sudden influx of young men, who came from 3 different directions. Most of them did not come to stand or sit where we were. What they did is that they sat next to the fence, others near the gate, and the rest were somewhere near the toilet. And at one time I remember I went to the washroom, and there is, now when I was thinking later, there was this one person who had a cape and had a mask, was like hooded, who from afar escorted me to the toilet, though I had my voice. Then he came back and went behind the VIP tent. I did not take offense because I didn't know who he was. I'm saying that because you will hear what happens when I get into the Subarus. So Many people spoke, but I want to bring it to where I was invited by the area MCA. And the area MCA specifically, he actually hit out at the local MP for going to vote no, to vote yes against Rigathi. For that impeachment motion, as his vote was the vote of Limuru, and he said that was not our wish. Na watu wakapiga makofi sana. Then he is the one who invited me. I broke my speech into two. One, and I told the people, I'll give message of condolence, which I did. The second, I'll tell you why I will talk about Rigathi. So the first part went on well. Then I came to the second part, and I started talking about how Rigathi had come and campaigned against me. However, I was now sharing a platform with him because we had decided to bury our interest in the greater interest of the community and the region. And as I started talking about Rigathi, there was a huge surge of youth who came specifically to the VIP tent. And I noted that VIP tent was like a target. So I was speaking and looking at them and trying to bring peace, telling them I'm peaceful, everybody who is here is peaceful. And they said, don't tell us about Rigathi. We would have voted for you, but he told us not to vote for you. I told them, that's fine. Even me, I would even probably not speak to him. But now that we have a common problem, we need to move together. They now started shouting back, said, no, we are not going to allow it. The first person to shout that, I told him, just relax. I explained, then you tell me whether what I've said is okay. But another person, a second one, shouted back. The third event was somebody who pulled out the support of the tent. In that tent, that I'm seeing now, when I saw the tent was collapsing on him, I kind of stopped because I wondered, where am I going? A visitor is almost going down with the tent. But they pushed me out. Some of them are here. And of course, Rigathi had his own security. They took him to the car and held both loose. They ran after us. And I want to make this clear that they had intentions. Because for the first time, I ran frantically for 2 kilometers.
You look like a marathon.
And what still is because it was downhill. So by the time I got where I was going, my knees were aching. Yeah, it's not a laughing matter, but we can laugh about it. And then at one time again we got onto the road, and then we saw those guys coming. Then they said, my guys told me, you know, those guys are carrying machetes, they are carrying pangas, some nut rulers. So the best thing you can do to speed the barabara, when they see they can't get you, wataingia kwa boda boda, alafu watafika mahali tuko. And indeed I did that. And therefore we got into one of the houses. I want to believe he's a cousin of Baba Yao, because he so introduced himself. And when we got there, he told us, you are not going to pass through the actual path. Mutapitia kwa majani, mutapitia kwa mahindi, na mutapitia kwa napier grass, and into the forest so that they don't see you. When we explained what was happening. And he quickly said, can you take off? Because probably he imagined what kind of harm there was going to be. So we took off, and we ended up in some road. And one of my PAs, then I told him, now that we're here, what do we do? I cannot go to walking to the main road. I don't know what will happen. So he said, we'll ask for a taxi. And we asked for a taxi. And this taxi came, it was very near the main road. And because I knew these guys probably would come to the shopping center of Bibioni, I I decided then I'll tell the taxi to drive me away towards Naivasha, and wherever I'll be, probably I'll look for a vehicle and use to get home, and that's what they did. In the meantime, I was trying to call my guys. My driver was not picking, but at least one of the guys picked and he said he's okay. Vehicles have been hammered, but where we end up to, you just go, we will see what to do. So to me, I took off on the way towards flyover. There's a center called flyover. And we were in that taxi. There are two Subarus. One black came in front. One green was at the back. But the one that came in front just stopped askew in front of us. And then this other one, when we checked, it was just almost knocking the bumper of the taxi. So two guys came from the front one. They opened the rear door. I was seated with the area MCA. I had my phone, and I'm saying that because the area MCA's phone had fallen off. Where is it? He said, I cannot trace it. Tukapiga ikawa inalia lakini haichukuliwi. Akaniambia imeanguka huko kwa kiwanja. Sasa yangu nilikuwa naye. And when they took us into the first vehicle, a few meters, like 100, they stopped again. Both of them very close range. And they pulled him out into the rear car. And then a guy came from behind and I was sandwiched. Macu. All these guys were hooded. And I said this because Kalembele, I spoke about somebody who was hooded in the barrio. And now, these guys who are inside the Subaru, all of them, including the driver, are hooded. They have a mask. And they have, one had a cape and the others had baklava. Now, one of the things I was told is lazima utatii na utakaa hapo na tukikuuliza, I'm saying this because they were speaking in Swahili, na tukikuuliza kitu ujibu. Umesikia? The only time I was allowed to check sideways, because later they told me usiangalie kando, uangalie mbele, is only when they asked, unaona hii ni nini? Na pande hiyo ingine ni nini? Those were shotguns. I've been a chairman of security, I know them. Now, one of the significant things is, nimeona they have shotguns. The numbers, the vehicles don't have number plates, and the guy in front has a walkie-talkie. So my conclusion was, who would be like this, driving a vehicle like this? Having seen what Jay-Z was going through, nikajua I am in for it. And so I said I'll answer. And the long and short of it, the questions were telling. One question I was asked immediately is whether I love myself. And I said yes. The second thing they asked is, do you have a wife? And I said yes. Do you love her? And I said yes. Tunaenda tu. Do you have children? Yes. How many? Nikawambia I have 4 children. 2 boys, 2 girls. Nikaanda kueleza, you are talking too much. You must answer after you are asked a question. So nikasema ndio saa. And therefore they asked, do you have these children? Yes. Wanafanya kazi? Ndio. Unawapenda? Ndio. Haya. Then they kept quiet. Tukafika kwa that place called flyover. They took the road towards, I think it goes to Thika. Yes. And it passes through some forest. Wakajama, that road is rough. And those guys can drive very roughly. Nikuwa nasikia people unagonga tu. And you know now, since they are holding their shotguns here, ikitingika hivi unasikia ni kama you have been shot. So I'm saying my last prayers anyway. You don't know what is happening. And tukafika mahali kuna msitu na kuna stinging nettles. In Kikuyu we call it thafai. I don't know whether that's the right word. Yes. So when we reached there, one of them asked, hapa ni sawa? Akasema hapana. But the other one said no. Tukaenda kidogo, wanaingia kwa msitu. Na hapa hapana. Can tell me which road it goes towards that hospital Kijadi or something. Yes. And they got into, they stopped at some forest, and then hata mmoja alitoka hapo. Kauliza hapo ni sawa? Akasema hapa ni sawa. Mimi nikasema no, that is it. I'm done. At that point, jamaa karudi, akasema hebu niambie, wewe uko na Twitter account? Nikamwambia ndio. Nani anakuandikia hiyo Twitter account? Nikasema ni mimi, I do it. Ni vitu gani unaandika hapo? Nikamwambia naandika zile vitu na ukota kutoka kwa group na vile Kenya kunaendelea, kama kuna shida naandika. Kwa hiyo wewe ndio unajua sana. Kaambia hapana, ukiangalia zile vitu nimeandika zote ni zile watu wengine wanasema. Na wewe unapenda serikali? I know I lied because I said yes. But I don't like it.
To survive.
Yeah, I lied. I said yes. I said, wakasema, haya, twende. So we went down and they got onto the Mahi road, and then we took off towards Narok. Now towards Narok, we got into a place, kuna mahali hakuna manyumba, but there are some thickets. They stopped there. That was the third time. I said, hapa ndio mwisho. So I didn't know whether ni mwisho wa safari ama ni mwisho yangu. Kasema hapa ni sawa kabisa. So I asked, mlikuwa mnataka nifanye aje? Because mimi sijaongea kitu mbaya. Mkiangalia vile niliongea pale kwa mazishi, nyamaza. Sisi tuko kazi. They said, keep quiet, we are doing our work. Asema asante. Even bad things wakisema nasema asante. Then all of a sudden then wakapinduka, and from that point towards Mahiu, there was intense discussion between them and somebody. Ule alikuwa mbele ndio alikuwa anauliza, wanasema kilo chali bravo or something, vitu kama hizo. I know it's some coded word, and mostly used by police. Now having been a chair of security, I know that, and maybe other people they use. But now I'm convinced that hizi magari hasema namba, watu wako na guns, wamejihud na wanaongea kilo chali, and I saw what happened to the agency. Then I knew I was obviously with those kind of people who are molesting peace-loving Kenyans just to stifle democracy. And so they took off talking, very coded, extremely coded the language, na wakaja towards Nairobi, branched off. In fact, kuna mahali walipitia wrong side pale ndio waingie Southern Bypass. And they got into Southern Bypass. They started driving slowly. There was a conversation that was intense with the coded words. And then they said, unajua tunaweza kukua. Now, when they said this, and I knew that road to cross towards Ngong Forest, I knew my life is over. Nikasema ndio, but hakuna kitu kibaya mimi nimefanya. Na hakuna mtu nimetusi. And so, tukaja tu, then they started speeding. And that conversation, finally how it ended along bypass was, yes sir, copied. The last word was, yes sir, copied. After copied, brakes, zikapigwa brakes, gari, I was alone. I never saw, I don't know how we lost the other one. But you know, I was told to face front. So sijui kama ingine inakuja ama ikuji, sijui, I'm only seeing up in between this guy and the driver. And therefore, along, when they said, yes sir, copied, Wakapiga brakes, gari kasimama. They told me, toka umbwa wewe. And so I got out in the middle of nowhere. Sikuwa na nyumba, sikuwa na nini. Nikajua sasa it's me and my God and prayer.
What time was it?
I can't tell time because they had actually, maybe I forgot to say, they had told me to switch off my phones. And I had switched them off. And I couldn't, because now you have been put somewhere, it's dark. You don't want to attract the attention of somebody, probably, aona mwangaza ya simu. You want also to move in the dark somehow. And so I didn't. So they put me on the side going towards Langata. And I thought they wanted to shoot me. So the moment they moved, I crossed on to the other side. And I went kwa ditch. Nikapitia sasa hiyo kama ni mtaro. Walking and running and checking whether any vehicle is coming. Okay, I guess it was between 600 or 800 meters. I got onto the road that branches off from Karen. I started running towards Karen in the middle of the road. And that's where I met with one boda fellow. Nilikuwa na karibu nimshikilia hivi. Na muomba tafadhali, shouting. But they stopped mbali. Nikamwambia ni wakora wananichapa. Nipatie lift, hata nitalipa. By the way, those guys never took anything from me. Hawakuchukua simu, hawakuchukua pesa, hawakuchukua anything. So he stopped and said, weka hapo nikufikisha hapa utauawa. And so I told him, drop me at the Great Corner. I knew I would get a taxi. Then along the way, I think he saw it was easy. Nikamwambia nimedropiwa hapo na wakora na nilijua hapo ni pabaya. Akaniambia anaenda Kilimani. Nikamwambia drop me there at Kilimani. So at Kilimani I picked a cab which took me home. Na nikamwambia kijana wangu, you go pay for me the taxi. At least we have evidence that is what has brought me. Okay. That is how it was.
Well done. Thank you. I guess that is very clear, and you can now see the intensity, the horrific harassment of Kenyans by state-sponsored goons. Of course, they should not be punished. Hey. And as we said in our statement, an attack on one, on all Kenyans. Thank you so much.